The Academy's corridors were buzzing with excitement and tension. Cadets from dozens of planets moved like streams of energy, their voices overlapping in a mixture of languages and dialects. The hallways, lined with glowing panels and hovering observation drones, shimmered under artificial light. This was the day of the partner selection ceremony, the day every cadet either secured a partner or faced humiliation. Among them, everyone carried their hopes, their dreams, and their fears, but none felt the weight of anticipation quite like her. She stood alone near the edge of the hall, her green-blue skin faintly glowing under the lights. Her eyes, large and almond-shaped, scanned the crowd, but there was no spark of hope. Her name was Vera, a member of the Ilari species. She had once been full of ambition, dreaming of exploration and adventure among the stars. But now, with her partially damaged neural limb and a body that sometimes refused to obey her commands, she had become a target of judgment. Cadets were pairing off quickly. Large, strong bodies strode confidently toward each other, shaking hands, sharing smiles, and nodding in quiet approval. Their movements were precise, efficient, and commanding. A few even laughed at the weaker candidates, whispering that some would never make it past the first trial. Vera's gaze lingered on them and her chest tightened. Every second passed like a hammer on her confidence. She knew why they avoided her. Strength and perfection were prized in this academy, and her body betrayed her every moment. She tried to step back, hoping no one would notice her lingering. Perhaps if she was invisible, the embarrassment would pass. But the room seemed determined to spotlight her alone. One by one, she watched the other cadets choose partners. There was laughter, congratulations, and sometimes reluctant acceptance. Every pairing was a reminder that she was not enough, that she was broken in ways her people considered unforgivable. Minutes passed. The ceremony began to near its end. Only a few cadets remained unpaired, and the murmurs grew louder. The observers from the council, the ones tasked with noting every cadet's performance and behavior, kept their eyes fixed on the scene. They wrote down their judgments, their pens scratching against hollow sheets, some even smirked. To them, the outcome was predictable. Vera felt her stomach twist. She had trained harder than anyone, memorized every protocol, and studied every combat strategy. Yet none of it seemed to matter. She had the knowledge, the intellect, but the world valued power over wisdom. And wisdom alone could not make a partner reach out. She thought about stepping aside, slipping out before the final bell. But a small voice inside urged her to stay. She had worked so hard, endured so much, and now she had to face this moment, no matter how painful. Then a sound cut through the noise, a voice that seemed oddly calm amidst the chaos. "Will you be my partner?" She looked up to see a human standing before her, his dark hair slightly messy, and eyes that seemed to look right through the walls of judgment around her. He did not hesitate, did not falter under the weight of expectation. His question was not filled with pity, nor was it laced with mockery. It was straightforward, honest, and strangely caring. The room went silent. For the first time, Vera felt a flicker of warmth in her chest, a tiny ember of hope she thought she had lost forever. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her limbs, normally reluctant, felt almost light. Her mind raced. She had expected rejection, scorn, even cruelty. She had not expected this. The human extended his hand, waiting. The gesture was simple, but to Vera it was monumental. No one had ever offered her partnership willingly, not even from her own species. They had all calculated her as a liability, an obstacle they could not risk. And yet here he was, choosing her, choosing her. A soft murmur ran through the hall. Cadets whispered to each other, their voices tinged with confusion. Observers scribbled notes furiously. Some shook their heads as if trying to erase the image from their minds. A disabled alien girl, one considered weak and unfit, was now paired with a human. It defied every expectation, every tradition, every rule silently imposed by centuries of prejudice. Vera's thoughts whirled. Could she do this? Could she live up to someone's trust when she could barely keep up with herself? Doubt clawed at her, but the human's steady gaze anchored her. She finally nodded, barely above a whisper. "Yes, I'll be your partner." They had never seen a human make a choice so unpredictable. In a world governed by efficiency and power, he had chosen heart. The human smiled, a small, genuine curve of his lips that made Vera's chest ache. "Good," he said. "We'll figure this out together." But for Vera, it was a lifeline. She felt something she hadn't in a long time, a sense of possibility, a sense that maybe she could belong here after all. The next few hours were a blur. Cadets moved to their training zones, instructors calling out instructions, and observers hovering silently. Vera and her human partner followed, still awkward and unsure. He introduced himself as Kale, a human from a distant star system. His tone was light, but there was an underlying seriousness that made her feel safe. He didn't treat her as weak. He treated her as capable, even if she doubted it herself. Their first exercise was simple: navigation and basic strategy. Cadets had to move through a maze of shifting terrain, gathering data nodes while avoiding simulated hazards. Other teams moved with precision, executing maneuvers they had rehearsed countless times. Vera stumbled at first, her body uncooperative, her limbs jerking unexpectedly. She felt the familiar sting of embarrassment, a reminder of why no one had chosen her. But Kale didn't criticize. He adjusted, slowed his pace, and guided her with small, precise gestures. He pointed out safer paths, suggested ways to leverage her unique perceptions, and quietly took the brunt of the physical strain himself. Vera noticed that while others relied on brute force, he relied on observation and adaptability. By the end of the exercise, they hadn't finished first. In fact, they were near the bottom, but something remarkable had happened. Vera had completed every task without collapse, without surrender, and without breaking down. And Kale had been beside her every step of the way, trusting her, supporting her, and showing her that her limitations did not define her worth. As they returned to the hall, instructors and cadets alike exchanged murmurs. Some shook their heads, dismissing their efforts. Others watched in quiet curiosity. No one had seen a partnership like this before. The human had chosen the girl who was considered unfit, and in return she had risen to the challenge in ways no one expected. Vera couldn't stop herself from smiling. It was tentative at first, a flicker, but it grew. Kale smiled too, a reassuring grin that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could belong. That night, as the academy went silent and cadets retired to their quarters, Vera sat alone in her room, replaying the day in her mind. The fear, the humiliation, and then the moment when Kale had asked her to be his partner. It all felt surreal. She had lived most of her life in the shadow of expectation and judgment, never once being chosen for who she was. And now, in one simple gesture, a human had changed everything. She thought about her species' long history of valuing strength above all else. For them, her disability had been a permanent sentence. And yet here was a human, a species known for its adaptability and unpredictability, seeing her potential, not her weakness. It was confusing, overwhelming, and exhilarating all at once. Vera realized that this was more than just a partnership. It was a statement. It was proof that the galaxy did not belong to the strong alone. There was space for the clever, the determined, the persistent, and even the wounded. And perhaps for the first time she felt a spark of pride. Tomorrow, the real training would begin. Challenges, obstacles, and trials would test them in ways she could not yet imagine. But for now, she allowed herself a small moment of peace. She was no longer invisible. She had been chosen. And that, she decided, was worth more than she could ever explain. The morning after the partner selection ceremony, the academy felt different to Vera. The halls, once a place of overwhelming judgment and anxiety, now seemed charged with quiet curiosity. Cadets passed by, whispering and glancing at her, some in disbelief, others with thinly veiled amusement. Her human partner, Kale, walked beside her as if nothing unusual had happened, his stride calm and confident. Despite the uneasy attention, Kale greeted her warmly. "Ready for your first real training session?" he asked, his tone casual but steady. Vera nodded, trying to ignore the knots in her stomach. She had trained for years, learned all the theory, memorized drills, and prepared mentally for this moment. But theory was different from reality. Reality involved speed, physical endurance, and coordination in ways her body sometimes refused to provide. Her disability made her movements slower, less precise. Every step felt like a negotiation with her own limbs. Their first training exercise was a simulated combat scenario. The Academy's holographic systems generated a shifting battlefield, complete with moving obstacles, simulated enemies, and environmental hazards. Teams were expected to navigate the field efficiently, using strategy, strength, and teamwork to reach specific objectives while avoiding failure. Other cadet pairs moved with practiced precision, their synchronization perfect. Large, muscular Elari cadets lifted heavy barriers effortlessly, while the swift Drathian twins darted through the simulated terrain with uncanny agility. Vera and Kale stepped onto the field, drawing curious stares. Many whispered that she would slow him down, that the human had made a foolish choice. Kale glanced at her, his eyes steady. "We'll figure it out together," he said softly, placing a hand on her shoulder. It was a simple gesture, but it carried reassurance. Vera felt a small spark of confidence. The exercise began and chaos erupted instantly. Holographic walls shifted without warning, simulated enemies attacked from unexpected directions, and the ground beneath them changed texture, from slick surfaces to uneven terrain. Vera's body reacted poorly. Her neural limb twitched unpredictably, and she stumbled over obstacles that seemed trivial to others. A nearby team of cadets laughed openly as she fell, one of them whispering, "See. I told you she's useless." The words stung, but Kale's presence kept her from collapsing into despair. He extended his hand, helped her up, and guided her through the next obstacle. Instead of trying to force her to move like the others, Kale adapted. He studied her movements, noticing patterns in her limitations, and suggested alternate paths that minimized strain while maximizing efficiency. "Go this way," he said, pointing to a slightly longer but safer route. "I'll cover the others." Together, they moved cautiously but effectively. Kale handled the physical challenges that Vera struggled with, while she provided insight, strategy, and timing. They didn't finish first, and they didn't finish fastest, but they completed every objective without failure. That alone drew attention. By the time the exercise ended, cadets who had mocked them in the beginning were whispering in surprise. Some instructors paused, evaluating them with renewed interest. Kale smiled at Vera, his expression quiet but proud. "See, we did it together." She had been considered weak her entire life, a liability, someone to avoid. Yet here she was, completing a full training exercise alongside a human who believed in her. The next session was more intense. Cadets were paired in teams for endurance drills designed to test physical limits, mental agility, and coordination. Many teams quickly formed tight strategies, relying on brute strength or speed. Vera and Kale moved cautiously, balancing her limitations with his capabilities. One obstacle involved climbing a series of suspended platforms while dodging simulated hazards. Vera struggled. Her injured limb made balancing difficult. Cadets above her shouted, mocking her lack of agility. A part of her wanted to give up, to crawl away and hide. But Kale's calm voice reminded her, "You're not alone. Take your time, I'll hold the rope steady." But she had completed the obstacle, and she had done it with someone who refused to let her fall. Their teamwork began to attract notice. Observers who had dismissed them as a joke were scribbling notes furiously. Cadets who had laughed now studied their movements in silence. Vera realized that their method was unusual but effective. While other teams relied on sheer power, they relied on adaptation and communication. By midday, fatigue set in. Most cadets were exhausted from the continuous drills, their movements becoming sloppy. Vera, however, was invigorated. Her body was tired, yes, but her mind was sharp. She anticipated environmental changes, calculated risk, and suggested efficient paths. Kale executed her plans with precision, trusting her instincts completely. One exercise tested tactical decision-making under pressure. Teams were dropped into a complex battlefield simulation where objectives shifted dynamically. Most teams reacted instinctively, moving toward the nearest target without much thought. Vera analyzed the scenario quickly, spotting patterns in the simulation. She directed Kale to secure strategic positions that other teams ignored. Their strategy worked. They achieved secondary objectives that no other team had considered. Although they didn't claim overall victory, their performance was remarkable, earning nods from instructors and whispers of amazement from cadets. Vera felt a surge of pride. For the first time, her abilities were not just tolerated, they were valued. Despite these successes, not all attention was positive. Some cadets grew resentful, refusing to acknowledge the effectiveness of their unconventional teamwork. Rumors spread that Kale was showing favoritism, that he was protecting the alien girl at the expense of fair competition. Vera ignored these whispers, focusing instead on the tangible results. They were progressing, surviving, and learning together. During a brief break, Kale handed her a water bottle. "You did well," he said simply. "Don't listen to them. Most people only see what they expect. We see what's real." No one had ever told her that what she saw, what she knew, and what she could do mattered. Her species had always dismissed her, other cadets mocked her, and even instructors had overlooked her intelligence. Kale's trust was different. It wasn't condescending. It wasn't pity. It was genuine belief. The final exercise of the day was a simulation designed to test coordination under crisis. Teams had to respond to a sudden, life-threatening hazard, an environmental collapse within the simulation. Most teams panicked. Some faltered entirely, their coordination breaking down under stress. Vera felt her pulse quicken. Her body screamed with exhaustion, her neural limbs spasming unpredictably. She froze for a moment, fear threatening to paralyze her. But Kale's hand was on her arm, grounding her. "We can do this," he said, his voice calm and steady. She took a deep breath and focused. Instead of reacting instinctively, she analyzed the scenario, predicting which hazards would activate first and where the safest paths lay. Kale moved beside her, executing her strategies with precision. Step by step, obstacle by obstacle, they navigated the collapsing environment. By the time the simulation ended, they were battered but victorious. Other cadets stared, unsure whether to congratulate or dismiss them. Instructors approached, asking questions and taking notes. It was clear that their teamwork, unusual as it was, had succeeded where others had failed. Exhausted but exhilarated, Vera and Kale returned to their quarters. Vera sank onto her bed, letting out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her body ached, her limbs trembled, but her mind was alive, sharp, and confident. Kale sat beside her, checking his own injuries and equipment. "You were incredible today," he said. "You adapted faster than I expected. Most people would have broken under pressure." She thought about the moments she had stumbled, the times she had feared failure, and the unexpected victories that had followed. She realized something profound. For the first time, she felt seen. Not as a weak cadet, not as a disabled alien girl, but as someone capable, someone valuable. That night, as she drifted into sleep, she thought about the academy in a new light. Challenges would come, ridicule would persist, and obstacles would grow. But for the first time, she had someone beside her who believed in her, not despite her limitations, but because of her strengths. And that belief, she knew, could change everything. The days that followed were unlike anything Vera had ever experienced. The Academy's usual hum of competitive energy seemed to shift around her and Kale. Other cadets no longer simply ignored her or mocked her outright. They watched. Every movement, every choice, every calculation she made was noted, whispered about, analyzed. Some stared in disbelief, some in admiration, but all recognized that this human-alien team was different. Vera felt both pride and pressure. Every exercise, every obstacle carried the weight of expectations she had never known before. She wasn't just herself anymore. She was a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not. She had to live up to Kale's trust or risk confirming every doubt that had followed her since childhood. Kale, for his part, remained calm and steady. He seemed to thrive under pressure, guiding Vera with quiet confidence. Unlike most cadets, he did not rely on raw power or speed. He relied on observation, strategy, and patience. His human ingenuity complemented Vera's perceptive mind perfectly. Together, they formed a system where the whole was greater than the sum of its parts. Their first challenge that week was a simulation of urban rescue. A city had been struck by a simulated seismic event, and teams were tasked with rescuing virtual civilians while avoiding collapsing buildings, falling debris, and unpredictable hazards. Other teams approached it with brute force. They barreled through obstacles, toppling virtual walls with strength, relying on speed and reaction time. Many failed to notice hazards or prioritize rescue points, losing points quickly. Vera and Kale moved differently. Vera studied the simulation as if she were reading a complex puzzle. She identified weak structures that could collapse first and predicted where survivors would be trapped. Kale executed her plan with precision, moving efficiently and stabilizing the environment when necessary. One moment in particular stuck with her. A simulated bridge collapsed unexpectedly, cutting off access to two virtual civilians. Most teams would have panicked or abandoned the effort. Vera paused, her heart pounding. Her mind raced through possibilities, calculating angles, force, and timing. "Use the smaller path here," she directed, pointing to a narrow alley that appeared unstable. "I'll stabilize the supports while you guide the civilians through." She found ways to shift her weight, balance carefully, and support the structure just enough. Kale moved the virtual civilians safely, and when the task was complete, they had saved every single one, something no other team had achieved. Cadets watching the simulation whispered in astonishment. Instructors paused their notes, leaning forward. Some cadets exchanged glances, realizing that this weak team was performing better than anyone had anticipated. After the exercise, Kale smiled at her. "See, we didn't need to be the strongest, we just needed to be smart." Yet here in this strange, bustling academy with its impossible standards, her mind, her perception and strategy was finally a strength. The next few days were a whirlwind of increasingly difficult exercises. Some tested endurance, others tested combat skill, and a few tested adaptability in unpredictable scenarios. Each time, Vera found herself challenged not only physically but mentally. Her body refused to cooperate at times, but Kale's steady presence gave her courage. He adjusted to her pace, covering the parts she could not manage while letting her shine where she excelled. Not everyone was pleased with their progress. A group of elite cadets, led by a tall, sharp-eyed Elari named Draven, began targeting them. Draven and his team were accustomed to being at the top, their superiority rarely questioned. Seeing a disabled alien girl paired with a human performing so well stirred something dangerous: envy. During a combat simulation, Draven deliberately misled his team, hoping to corner Vera and Kale. "They won't know what hit them," he whispered to his teammates, smirking. Vera noticed the subtle shift in the battlefield patterns. She had learned to read the flow of exercises, to spot traps and anticipate cunning moves. Her eyes narrowed and she signaled to Kale. "They're trying to trap us. Move to the left flank and use the terrain to our advantage." Together, they executed a maneuver that caught Draven's team off guard. The elite cadets stumbled, their plan falling apart. By the end of the simulation, Vera and Kale had not only survived but excelled, completing the objectives faster and more efficiently than many stronger teams. Afterward, Draven approached, his expression a mixture of anger and disbelief. "How did you?" he began, then paused, realizing he had no explanation. Vera avoided his gaze, focusing instead on the positive. Kale simply smiled, shrugging casually. "We just worked together," he said. The encounter left Vera shaken and exhilarated at once. She had faced mockery and scorn countless times, but this was different. They had challenged someone who had always been untouchable, someone at the top of the hierarchy, and succeeded. By midweek, word of their teamwork spread across the academy. Cadets began to watch them more closely. Some approached with curiosity, others with skepticism, but all were forced to acknowledge that something unusual was happening. Vera found herself in a strange position. For the first time, she was not invisible. People noticed her, whispered about her, and in some cases respected her abilities. One evening, as training wound down, Kale and Vera sat on the edge of the Academy's observation deck, looking out over the artificial landscape. The twin suns of the Academy's planet cast long, golden shadows. "You're thinking a lot," Kale observed, tossing a small pebble off the edge. Vera sighed, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "It's strange," she admitted. "For so long I've been ignored, laughed at, or dismissed. Now everyone is watching. It's overwhelming." That difference can be our strength. Teams were merged temporarily to face complex missions, testing cooperation under pressure. Vera and Kale were paired with cadets from other species, some stronger, some faster, and some more experienced. The first few minutes were chaotic. Communication broke down, frustration flared, and many cadets doubted that the team could succeed. Vera felt the familiar pang of anxiety, her body trembling under the stress. But Kale's calm presence reminded her of what they had learned together. "Observe first," he whispered. "We'll guide them through the chaos." She began directing movements, assigning tasks based on observation rather than assumptions. Kale supported her instructions, reinforcing her strategy and providing cover when needed. Slowly, the team began to function cohesively. Cadets who had been skeptical started following her directions, realizing her insight was accurate. Vera felt a surge of confidence as the mission progressed. Despite her physical limitations, her mind had become an anchor for the team. By the time the exercise concluded, the combined team had completed objectives no one expected them to finish. Cadets who had doubted Vera now regarded her with cautious respect. Some even approached afterward to ask for her advice. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging within the academy, not as a tolerated presence, but as a valuable contributor. The growing recognition did not come without its challenges. Draven and his allies continued to resist, attempting to undermine Vera's efforts in subtle ways. They questioned her decisions, spread rumors, and created obstacles wherever possible. But Vera and Kale had learned to adapt. They moved forward with quiet determination, their teamwork stronger than ever. By the end of the week, Vera reflected on how much had changed in such a short time. She had faced ridicule, envy, and doubt. But she had also discovered her own strength, the power of partnership, and the unique advantages of her mind. She realized that strength came in many forms, and that the galaxy was far larger than the narrow definitions her species had imposed on her. Kale walked beside her as they returned to their quarters. "You've grown a lot this week," he said simply. "And not just in skill. You've learned how to make people see what others refuse to notice. I'm still afraid, she admitted, but I feel like I can face it now. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with trials that would challenge her mind, body, and spirit. Yet for the first time, she did not feel alone. She had Kale beside her, a human who saw her for what she was and who believed in her abilities. The Academy's world of judgment and expectation remained, but Vera now faced it with a newfound sense of possibility. She had survived ridicule, navigated challenges, and begun to prove her worth, not just to others but to herself. And in that realization, she found something more powerful than strength or speed. She found hope. The Academy was quiet that morning, but the calm felt strange, almost unnatural. A warning alarm broke the silence, red lights flashing across the corridors. Holographic displays lit up with urgent messages. An unauthorized fleet of hostile drones had breached the outer training sectors. The simulation had become real. For the first time, cadets faced a live threat beyond controlled exercises. Vera's pulse quickened. She glanced at Kale, who was already moving with calm precision, eyes scanning the alert screens. "We need to assess the situation first," he said, his voice steady. "Rushing in blindly will get people hurt." They quickly joined the command center, where instructors and senior cadets were coordinating the defense. Draven stood nearby, arms crossed, glaring at Vera and Kale. "Don't get in our way," he snapped. "We'll handle this." They were designed to test defenses, but they were also capable of real destruction. Cadets scrambled to assign teams, deploy defensive measures, and organize evacuation routes. Chaos erupted around them. Kale crouched beside her. "We'll need a strategy that uses both of us. Don't try to match their speed. Focus on what you see." She scanned the holographic battlefield, noting patterns in the drone movements. Most cadets were reacting instinctively, firing at the nearest threats or moving blindly to protect themselves. Vera saw weaknesses. If they positioned themselves cleverly, they could control the drone's path, protect vulnerable cadets, and prevent casualties. She outlined a plan quickly. "We need to lure the drones toward the outer barrier," she instructed. "I'll monitor their targeting systems, predict movements. You cover the corridors and guide the other cadets to safety." She guided the drone's path, issuing instructions to cadets with clear precision. Some followed, some hesitated, but Kale's presence reassured them. Together, they became the axis around which the chaotic defense rotated. At one point, a large drone broke through the outer barrier, heading directly toward a group of inexperienced cadets. Vera's heart leapt. If it hit, several could be seriously injured. Kale was already moving, placing himself between the threat and the cadets. Vera's mind raced. "Move to the left flank," she called. "It's unstable. Use the debris to block its sensors." Vera exhaled, her hands trembling slightly from relief. The battle continued, escalating in intensity. Drones attacked from multiple angles, some using high-speed dives, others deploying simulated energy bursts. Many cadets were unprepared, panicking under the pressure. Draven's team struggled as well, their coordination faltering in the chaos. Vera remained focused. She directed teams, predicted movements, and corrected mistakes on the fly. Kale protected her when debris fell, took command of panicked cadets, and ensured the plan held together. Their combined efforts created a calm center amid the storm of panic and confusion. Then, the situation took a dangerous turn. A massive wave of drones broke through the central defense, threatening to breach the main training facility. Panic surged as cadets scrambled. Vera froze for a split second, her body straining against pain and fatigue. For a moment, fear threatened to paralyze her. Kale grabbed her hand, steadying her. "We can do this." "Trust me." "Then let's bait them, lead the way." The massive wave shifted, drawn away from the main facility, following the path Vera had calculated. Cadets cheered quietly as the immediate danger passed. Some instructors even nodded in impressed acknowledgement. For the first time, Vera felt that her skills, her mind, her perception, her patience, were not just useful but vital. The drones were not yet fully neutralized. A final cluster remained, moving rapidly toward the Academy's power core. If it hit, the entire facility could be compromised. Panic erupted again. Draven shouted orders, but his team hesitated, unsure how to respond. Vera's mind worked fast. She identified a narrow corridor with energy-shielding panels. "We can trap them here," she directed. "Kale, guide the cadets through the side exits." "I'll handle the trap." She activated the containment sequence. Lights flashed, barriers closed, and the threat was neutralized. Silence fell over the command center. Cadets stood frozen, catching their breath, staring at the results. The exercise, which had turned into a near disaster, ended in complete success. Kale turned to Vera, smiling despite sweat and dirt streaking his face. "We did it. Together." "You handled that well," he admitted. "Better than I expected." Observers and instructors praised the efficiency and creativity of Vera and Kale's teamwork. Many cadets who had doubted them now looked at them with curiosity and respect. Word spread quickly. The disabled alien girl and the human partner had handled a real threat when most others struggled. Vera felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. For so long, she had lived under the weight of judgment and rejection. Now she was recognized not because she was physically strong, but because she had adapted, thought critically, and trusted someone who believed in her. The days that followed brought quieter but equally important lessons. The academy had to adjust its perspective. More cadets began observing Vera and Kale, attempting to learn from their methods. Some teams even sought their advice during exercises, realizing that raw strength was not the only path to success. Vera, however, remained humble. She understood that their success was not about her individual brilliance alone. It was about partnership, trust, and willingness to adapt. Kale's faith in her had unlocked a potential she had never realized. Together, they had shown that what the galaxy considered weak could be strong, and that intelligence and cooperation could surpass raw power. One evening, as they reviewed training logs in the observation deck, Kale glanced at her. "You changed things today," he said softly. "You made people see differently. You made them question what they thought strength meant." For the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was contributing, leading, and making a real difference. The academy, the cadets, even her own species' prejudices, none of it could diminish the fact that she had proven her worth in a way no one could deny. The night sky outside stretched endlessly, stars twinkling across the planet's artificial horizon. Vera gazed at them, thinking about the future. Challenges would come, threats would rise, and enemies would test them in ways they couldn't predict. But she knew now that she was not alone. Kale believed in her, and she had begun to believe in herself. And that belief, she realized, was stronger than any weapon. The academy had never been this tense before. An urgent alert blared through the halls, and the normally structured routine of drills and exercises shattered into chaos. A fleet of rogue combat drones had breached the outer sectors, moving with precision and coordination unlike anything the cadets had faced before. This was no simulation. This was real, and the academy itself was under threat. Vera's pulse raced as she ran alongside Kale toward the command center. The corridors were filled with cadets scrambling in confusion. Some moved with purpose, others in panic. Every eye turned toward the threat, every mind calculating survival. Vera felt her body strain as her neural limb twitched uncontrollably, but her mind remained sharp. She had trained for this in simulations and exercises, but real danger had a way of magnifying every fear, every weakness. Kale's hand brushed hers briefly. "We've got this. Together," he said, his voice calm but firm. His words anchored her, grounding her racing thoughts. Vera nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. The command center was a hive of activity. Holographic displays mapped the movement of the drones, showing their trajectory and speed. Instructors barked orders, trying to coordinate defense teams while cadets mobilized to protect the outer facilities. Draven stood off to the side, his expression tight with tension, clearly struggling to maintain control. Kale crouched beside Vera, his eyes scanning the data. "We need a plan that uses both of us. Don't try to match their speed. We need precision, strategy, and trust. Each wave overcompensates slightly after the last. If we can predict their path, we can redirect them and protect the academy." Vera's mind worked faster than ever, predicting drone behavior and calculating safe routes for evacuation. Her disability made some movements slow and awkward, but Kale adapted seamlessly, compensating where she could not and reinforcing her strategies where she excelled. The first wave of drones attacked a training wing. Most cadets panicked, firing blindly and moving without coordination. Vera directed teams to use corridors and barriers strategically. "Left flank, use the energy shield, move civilians here," she shouted, her voice cutting through chaos. Kale executed her commands with precision, moving through corridors to cover cadets and prevent accidents. A large drone broke through the outer perimeter, heading toward a group of inexperienced cadets. Vera's heart leapt. If it hit, several could be seriously injured. Kale moved to intercept, but Vera quickly analyzed the environment. "Debris to the right, Use it to block its sensors. Drones attacked from multiple angles, using speed, firepower, and unpredictable maneuvers. Most cadets struggled to keep pace. Even Draven's elite team faltered, their rigid training ill-suited for the adaptability required. Vera stayed calm, issuing instructions and predicting threats. She directed Kale to cover vulnerable cadets, coordinated defense teams, and monitored the drones' behavior. Step by step, they stabilized the situation, turning chaos into coordinated defense. Then the worst happened. A massive wave of drones breached the central training sector, heading toward the main power core. If it struck, the entire academy could collapse. Panic erupted. Cadets scattered, shouting and stumbling over one another. Draven barked orders, but his team hesitated, unsure how to respond. Vera's body ached violently. Her neural limb twitched painfully, and exhaustion gnawed at her, but her mind focused with crystal clarity. She noticed a narrow corridor with energy shielding panels. "We can trap them here," she called to Kale. "Guide cadets through the side exits while I set the trap." The drones entered the trap exactly as Vera predicted. She activated the final containment sequence. Lights flashed, barriers closed, and the threat was neutralized. Silence fell over the command center. Cadets stood frozen, catching their breath, staring at the results. The impossible had been achieved. Kale turned to her, a small smile breaking through sweat-streaked fatigue. "We did it. Together." "Better than I expected," he admitted, though his pride still made his words harsh. Vera said nothing, focusing instead on the monitoring screens. Kale simply nodded at Draven, acknowledging the comment without argument. In the aftermath, the Academy Council convened an emergency review. Observers and instructors praised the efficiency and creativity of Vera and Kale's teamwork. Many cadets who had doubted them now approached, seeking guidance and advice. Some whispered that humans' adaptability, combined with her perceptiveness, had turned the tide. Vera sat quietly in her quarters later that night, exhaustion weighing on her limbs. The day had been a trial beyond anything she had imagined. Yet, as she reflected, a sense of satisfaction filled her chest. She had proven herself not just to others, but to herself. Kale entered quietly, carrying 2 nutrient packs. "You should eat," he said gently, placing one beside her. "You've earned it." "Do you know what impressed me most?" he asked. "Not your skills, not your strategy, it was your calm. You stayed focused when everyone else panicked. You trusted yourself, even when your body tried to betray you. Maybe, but you're the one who saw the patterns, who thought ahead, who stayed calm. That's not something everyone can do." Strength could be intelligence, adaptability, creativity, and trust. The next morning, the academy felt different. Cadets no longer whispered with ridicule. Many looked at Vera and Kale with curiosity, respect, or cautious admiration. Instructors allowed them more responsibility, assigning them to lead exercises and guide younger cadets. For the first time, Vera felt a sense of belonging. One afternoon, Kale and Vera were walking across the observation deck when a group of cadets approached them. We wanted to thank you," one said timidly. "Your strategy during the attack saved lives. We learned a lot just by watching." Now her abilities were valued and recognized. "Thank you," she said softly. "We just did what we thought was best." She and Kale became a model of cooperation and adaptability, inspiring cadets across species to think beyond brute strength and rigid rules. One evening, as the sun set over the academy's horizon, Vera reflected on the journey she had taken. She remembered the fear of being unchosen, the humiliation of being overlooked, the countless doubts she had carried. And she remembered the moment Kale had asked her to be his partner, a simple question that had changed everything. She smiled softly. For the first time in her life, she wasn't defined by her limitations. She was defined by her choices, her perseverance, and her ability to trust and be trusted. She had been chosen not because she was perfect, but because someone saw her potential and believed in it. Kale joined her on the deck, placing a hand lightly on hers. "Ready for tomorrow?" he asked, a playful glint in his eyes. Vera nodded, a sense of calm determination settling over her. "We'll face it together," she said. And as the stars emerged in the evening sky, shining brightly across the academy's artificial horizon, Vera understood a truth that would guide her for the rest of her life. Humans did not seek perfection. They sought courage, partnership, and trust. And in that pursuit, even the weakest could become strong, and even the overlooked could become heroes. She looked at Kale, and for the first time, she felt certain of something. Together, they could face anything the galaxy threw at them. The Academy, the cadets, even the galaxy beyond, the world had underestimated them. But they had survived, they had adapted, and they had proved that strength was more than muscle, more than speed. It was the courage to act, the ability to think, and the willingness to trust. Vera squeezed Kale's hand, a silent acknowledgement of everything they had overcome. They had started as an unlikely pair, judged by the galaxy as weak and unfit. Now they were symbols of possibility, proving that humanity and the belief in others could challenge expectations and redefine what it meant to be strong. The stars glittered above, infinite and unending, and Vera knew that their journey had only just begun. Together, they would explore, protect, and shape a galaxy that had once doubted them. And this time, no one would underestimate them again.